I see that there's quorum. So I must inform the members that the clerk of the committee can only receive motions for the election of the chair. The clerk cannot receive other types of motions, cannot entertain points of order, nor participate in debate. So we can now proceed to the election of the chair. Pursuant to Standing Order 106.2, the chair must be a member of the official opposition. So now I'm ready to receive motions for the chair. Ms. Roberts?
Yes, I nominate Shelby Cram-Newman. Nyman. God.
Perfect. All right. So it has been moved by Mrs. Roberts that Mrs. Cramp-Nyman be elected chair of the committee. Are there any further motions? All right. Seeing as there are no further motions, I'll put the first motion to the question. It has been moved by Ms. Roberts that Ms. Cramp-Nyman be elected as chair of the committee. Is it the pleasure of the committee to adopt the motion?
Yes.
Just a recorded division.
Yeah. A recorded division. Okay. So it has been requested that we move to a vote, a recorded vote. So I will proceed to the vote. So, Madame Lambropoulos?
I abstain.
Mr. Moff?
I abstain.
Ms. Sidhu?
Abstain.
Ms. Hefner?
Abstain.
Ms. Vandenbeld?
I abstain.
Ms. Ferreri?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Oh, yeah.
Madame Bien?
Oui.
Ms. Cramp-Nyman?
Oui.
Madame Larouche?
Je m'abstiens.
Ms. Gazan?
Abstain.
4 yeas, no nays. I declare the motion carried. So, Ms. Cramp-Nyman, I declare you duly elected chair of the committee. I invite you to take the chair.
So just for about 2 minutes, we'll suspend and then we'll carry on with the meeting. Call the meeting back to order. Welcome to meeting number 105 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on the Status of Women. I think it's incumbent of me at this point to acknowledge and thank and give homage to Karen Vecchio, Member of Parliament Karen Vecchio, for her commitment, her compassion, and her dedication and advocacy on this file. So thank you, Karen. I would like to make a few comments for the benefit of the members and all witnesses. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize your name. For those participating by video conference, I believe we just have one member on video conference. You're familiar. Click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you're not speaking. This is familiar for you, MP Lambropoulos. Although the room is equipped with a powerful audio system, feedback events can occur. These can be extremely harmful to interpreters and cause serious injuries, so be mindful of that. The most common cause of sound feedback is an earpiece worn too close to a microphone. We therefore ask all participants to exercise a high degree of caution when handling the earpiece, especially when your microphone or your neighbor's microphone is turned on. To prevent incidents and safeguard the hearing health of the interpreters, I invite participants to ensure that they speak into the microphone into which their headset is plugged into, and to avoid manipulating the earbuds by placing them on the table away from the microphone when they are not in use. And a reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. With regards to the speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do the best we can to maintain consolidated order of speaking for all members, whether they are participating virtually or in person. So pursuant to Standing Order 108-2 and the motion adopted by the committee on Monday, November 27th, 2023, the committee will resume its study of the implementation of a red dress alert. At this point, I would like to welcome our witnesses. We have today with us the Honourable Minister Gary Anna Desangri, Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, and from the Department of Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs, we have Valerie Gideon, Deputy Minister. We have Krista Apps, Director General of Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Secretariat. From the Department of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, we have Kenza Albeed, Director General, Policy and Outreach Directorate, Emergency Management and Programs Branch. Arun Vinodrai, Senior Director, Policy and Programs Development, Emergency Management and Programs Branch. You will each have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, followed by rounds of questions. Minister, at this point, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Kwekwe, Ulaku, Tanzi, hello, bonjour. Let me begin by acknowledging that we're gathered here on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. And I want to thank all of you for your hard work in supporting this initiative. Je vous remercie tout pour le travail.
I want to thank you for all the work you've done on this important initiative.
And congratulate you, Madam Chair, on your appointment. I also want to take this moment to thank former Chair Karen Vecchio for her long-standing commitment to this issue and her hard work during the committee process. Let me also thank my colleague and friend Leah Gazan from Winnipeg Centre for her incredible advocacy and bringing the House united in supporting the establishment of a red dress alert, along with my colleague Pam Damoff. So both of you are indebted to your hard work and resolve to get us here. This work will save lives. As we all know, Budget 2024 included an investment of $1.3 million to continue developing the Red Dress Alert. This is exciting news that will help the momentum going. Every Indigenous person who goes missing and is not found is a failure on our part. I know there will be some people who are frustrated at the pace of implementing an alert. There are some who say that this can be done overnight. I do not subscribe to that belief. We need to keep the pressure on and move quickly, but we also need to get this right. There are many factors to consider, as you have heard through the study. Those include different regional contexts, strained relationships between communities and law enforcement, jurisdictional considerations. Moving the dial on this is not an option or a choice, it is a moral imperative. Despite only making up 4% of Canada's population, Indigenous women and girls represent 28% of homicides perpetuated against women. An Indigenous woman is 12 times more likely to go missing or be murdered than a non-Indigenous woman. Une femme autochtone, 12 fois plus.
An Indigenous woman is 10 times more likely to be assassinated than a non-Indigenous woman.
California and Washington are helping locate people. The studies show us that the hours after someone goes missing are the most critical time to find them. In February, I drove the entire Highway of Tears in northern British Columbia. I listened to grassroots organizers on the front lines, the Tears of Hope Society, who you've heard from earlier this week. Alongside a red dress alert, they stressed the importance of resolving the systemic crisis. At the Denny's where we met, the women told me how important ceremony is to them and how important it is to pass along traditions and languages to the next generation. In 2016, our government called a national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls after years of previous government's refusal. This June will mark 5 years since the national inquiry released its final report and the 231 calls to justice. En juin prochain, il y aura 5 ans.
In June, it will have been 5 years since the National Inquiry published its final report, including the calls to justice.
For investments in shelters, community safety, culture, housing, infrastructure. We're making progress in all these areas, and Budget 2024 was another example of that. But I say this all the time. The calls to justice are not a checklist. They require urgent, sustained action and commitment from all parties. They're long-term structural changes that help us undo the legacy of colonialism. This work is critical, and it will not happen overnight. Eventually, the hope is to get to a place where we no longer need a red dress alert. Or in other words, we build a future where Indigenous people are safe. The government will be a partner in that journey. I thank everyone who has contributed to this process in informing the path forward. Your work is invaluable. Miigwech, kuyanamik, merci, merci.
Perfect. Thank you, Minister. The first round goes to, pardon me. Thank you, and I'll now give the floor to the Department of Public Safety for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair and Committee Member, for the opportunity to speak to you today. So before I get started, I would like first to acknowledge that we are gathering today on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. So in my role within public safety, I'm responsible for working with other federal departments and agencies, provinces and territories, national Indigenous organizations, as well as other stakeholders to advance an integrated policy approach to all aspects of emergency management. Je voulais commencer par dire que je partage vos...
I wanted to begin by saying that I share your deep concerns that Indigenous women, girls, two-spirit, and gender-diverse persons continue to be at greater risk of abduction, homicide, and other forms of violence. I commend the work you are undertaking through this study.
I would like to speak about the National Public Alerting System, its governance, and Public Safety Canada role. The National Public Alerting System provides federal, provincial, and territorial emergency management organizations with a standard alerting capability to warn of imminent and unfolding threat to life. Like all emergency management functions in Canada, public alerting is a collaborative initiative between federal, provincial, territorial government, as well as industry partners. The governance of the system is complex. There is no overarching governing body. There are many players involved in the system. First, individual government determine who, within their jurisdictions, may issue alerts through the system on matters related to their responsibility. These designated authorities decide when to issue an emergency alert, the alert type, the message content, and geographical areas affected. Second, Pelmorax Corp operates the system which validates and disseminates emergency alerts. Pelmorax is supported by a multiple stakeholder governance council, which provides direction and advice on technical priorities. Finally, the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunication Commission set out the regulatory framework for the mandatory distribution of alerts. With regard to the role of my department, we support the National Public Alerting System primarily in two ways. First, we support the coordination of activities of federal alerting partners with those of the provinces and territories. And second, we support collaborative work with provinces and territories to advance shared for the system. One of our key policy interests for this work is advancing common approach to emergency communications, including the adoption of standards and best practices. With regards to federal, provincial, and territorial collaboration, federal, provincial, and territorial senior official responsible for emergency management, or SORM, it's the primary forum where this occurs. SORM is made up of the heads of provincial and territorial emergency management organization and the Assistant Deputy Minister of the Emergency Management and Programs Branch of Public Safety Canada. SORM is the steward of guidelines for the consistent presentation of alert through the system, including the Common Look and Feel guidance, the Canadian profile of the Common Alerting Protocol, and the broadcast immediate event list. These guidelines aim to ensure emergency public alerts are easily recognizable anywhere in Canada. I wanted to conclude my remarks by emphasizing that Public Safety Canada is committed to collaborating with all public alerting stakeholders to improve the effectiveness and continuity of emergency alerting in Canada. With regards to exploring new issues of the system, on the system, I would note that SORM has recently facilitated revisions to these guidelines to support a test by Quebec to evaluate the use of the system to distribute a silver alert. In the context of your discussions, my team at Public Safety Canada has been supporting our colleagues at the Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada in its redress alert engagement. We have been providing subject matter expertise and consideration on the potential to use the National Public Alerting System for such an alert. We look forward to continued collaboration with provinces and territories, including supporting Crown Indigenous Relations engagement at SORM as their work continues. I'm pleased to take any questions further. Thank you for this opportunity.
Madame la Présidente, j'aurais un...
Madam Chair, point of order, please, if you'd allow me. For me to understand, I don't know if Andrian has the same questioning. During the interpretation, when you give acronyms, it's not clear to francophones. So could you tell me what the acronyms are?
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Le C, j'ai dit SORM official. Oh, oui, je peux vous le dire en français.
I could tell you in French.
I think it would be helpful even in English.
C'est le cadre. I'm sorry.
Thank
Same
you.
point, on the same point of order? Yeah.
It would be helpful even in English if you said what SORM stands for. I know it's an acronym, but what do all those letters stand for?
Yes, it's the senior officials. So SORM, as it's for senior official representative. And I'm so sorry because I thought I said it like at the beginning.
In English and in French, that would be helpful.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you.
Oui, je l'ai. Oui. Non, je l'ai en français.
On vient de me le transmettre. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I'm very sorry.
Quelque chose.
It's something that we need to do. I'm very sorry about that.
The first 6 minutes goes to MP Ferrari.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. And the only reason I knew exactly what my colleague was talking about was because I asked this question before we even started of what SORM stood for, to my colleague's point. So no worries at all. We live in an acronym world here in Ottawa. I have a question, if I may. Is it Albied? Albied? If you were told today to implement Red Dress Alert, if it was given the go-ahead to SORM, it sounds like the infrastructure is already in place, the weather alert system, Amber Alert system. If this was added on, how long would it take to implement?
Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, I will not be able to give you a timeline how long it will take to implement this, because it will need a lot of engagement with the PTs, with the provincial and territorial organizations.
Okay, sorry. I'll be more clear. I don't mean from a relationship perspective. I mean strictly from an infrastructure technology, that the technology, is it already in place, that if it was to get a go-ahead, that you would get, that it is ready to go?
I would not describe it as it's ready to go. It depends which type, what are the details and the technical element that needs to be implemented, because the infrastructure that we have in place right now, it's not like a general infrastructure that could be used by any type of alert. And please add on, Arjun, if you have any details on that.
Just to add to the point as well, too, through the engagement, I know, the exact requirements would need to be determined, and then that would determine the timelines, the technological requirements, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. I think what I'm getting at is we had a witness here who suggested the weather alert system would work really well for this, in particular because it's regionalized. And so, okay, I live in Peterborough-Kawartha. There's a tornado warning in Peterborough-Kawartha. That alert system goes strictly to Peterborough-Kawartha. There's a missing Indigenous woman in, Northern Ontario in whichever, area. Is it ready infrastructure-wise that's already there, is what I'm saying, that there wouldn't, if it's already in place, is what I'm trying to get an answer out of that.
There is an infrastructure in place for the weather alert. I'm afraid to say the same infrastructure will be just used for the red dress alert. I will not be in that position to say the same infrastructure will be used for this kind or type of alert. Unfortunately, we can take that back and dig into it and provide a written response, but I cannot respond to the critical timeline or confirm that there is an infrastructure in place of that.
Minister, to you, would you know that answer of how that infrastructure piece is? Because I think, listen, we are all on board with this alert system. What we're trying to do here is nail out the details of ensuring that it gets out. It sounds like the infrastructure is already in place.
Thank you for that question. And let me just say that there are a number of different pieces and available technology that can be relatively easily adaptable to a red dress alert system. I think the issue that we are addressing, and I'm going to maybe ask Krista to elaborate, is what we're going to do in terms of who's in charge of the alert system, so there's a lot of issues around co-development that we need to work on.
100% understand that piece, and we've heard that through testimony and being mindful of my time. Thank you. I think what I was just trying to say is, when we got the COVID alerts, the alert system is already in place, which is very, very good. I think what is frustrating for folks, it's like, it's there. We don't need sort of dollars invested in this. We have that. I understand the relationship piece, who's sort of overseeing that. That has a lot of what we've heard from. So I appreciate that in terms of ensuring the right people, in particular Indigenous leaders, are at the helm of this. I respect that. Minister, you talked about driving along the Highway of Tears, and I'm curious, did you try your cell phone when you were driving along that highway, and did you have any dead zones?
I did drive. There's three of us. We drove. Cell phone service has improved drastically. So I would say when I went, it was much better. There were some dead zones. I would say between Terrence and when I visited the Nishka, for example, there are some dead zones and in other places as well. But I think there are new cell towers being built there.
So I think, Minister, you can appreciate that dead zone is literally a dead zone when somebody doesn't have access. And so I think that's one of the big key issues that I think we would like to raise. You have shown, this is important to you, but how are you going to work with your ministers to ensure when you have an Auditor General report found that rural and remote communities are currently sitting at 60% high-speed internet access? The same AG report says government efforts are falling short. While 91% of Canadian households had access, just 59.5% of those in rural and remote areas enjoyed the same access, and that number drops to 42.9% for households on First Nations reserves.
Seconds.
So if I think what we're looking for here is to ensure that that is going to be addressed, that has to be addressed in ensuring that this red dress alert saves lives.
Completely agree.
The next 6 minutes, MP Sidhu.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleague. Before I begin to my question to the Minister, I would like to make an important comment about the election of the Chair of this committee. I want to welcome and congratulate the Chair of this committee. Nothing against you, but I want to and congratulate you, the new Chair. And we all look forward to working with you collaboratively, how our past chair was doing with us. Ms. Vecchio established over the years the place here. I want to say the previous chair of the committee made sure we work well together, listen to the experts, and most importantly, collaboratively we produce so many reports good. I know her from 2017. She made sure the committee produces a record numbers of good reports, and from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank Ms. Vecchio's passion of her work for all Canadians, women and girls through this committee. I do not understand the decision of the Leader of Opposition to remove such a great advocate for women and girls, such as the previous chair for this committee. With that said, we have important work to do. So I really want to say thank you for her work. And let's work collaboratively how your predecessors made their steps. So now over to you, Minister. Thank you for joining us today with your team. The committee is united in making sure that the red dress alert system is established and the work properly to save lives. This committee heard many times that the system should be Indigenous-led. How do you plan to implement this important principle?
Thank you. We have undertaken extensive engagements. There's been over 16 engagements in the different regions of the country, many of which were attended by MP Dimov as well as MP Gazan. I participated in some of them. There are a number of different critical partners that have been working for many, many years on the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and gender diverse people. And they've informed us a great deal. I think the next step of this is where we need to start co-developing the system along with our partners and to ensure that the system is responsive to the needs, because the last thing we want to do is create a system that is devoid of usage by those it's meant to use it, as well as those who it's meant to support. So it's critical that we get this right. And I want to ask Krista Apps to maybe give us a little bit more light into what the next steps are.
Sure. Thank you, Chair, for the question. When we talk about co-development, there's some things that we want to think about. Some of the things that we talked about already through the engagement sessions, but at a very high level. So we really need to get into some further detail around defining criteria and what does that actually mean? We can't pretend to define that criteria as a government. That must be done with partners, with technical organizations on the ground who have a clear understanding about what that impact will be. We've talked a little bit, you've heard a little bit about oversight and the importance of who actually oversees the red dress alert. That's another important element that we would want to talk further with partners about and come to ground on what that oversight will look like and how law enforcement's involved in the red dress alert system. We talked a little bit about also, we need to talk a little bit about what information is captured. How is that information captured and who oversees that information? How is that shared publicly and what elements of that are shared publicly? So those are all things that we need to continue to have conversations about, to engage with Indigenous partners and people who have a solid understanding of that on the ground. Maybe I'll add one last thing. I'm sure the committee has heard about wraparound services and the need for the connections between and among the wraparound services that need to exist to support families and survivors once a woman is found. And so how do we make sure that that takes place? What exists already? And how do we make those connections between the various services that are offered that exist and what gaps exist?
We know that many municipalities, such as Regina and Winnipeg, are home to vibrant and strong urban Indigenous communities. How would a red dress alert system be administered with this communities minister, if you can elaborate on that?
If you could possibly wrap up in 30 to 40 seconds, that'd be great.
I think at this stage we're looking for regional, provincial, territorial, or regional partners, and we have a number of very active discussions. There's at least 2 provinces and 2 territories who are willing to start this process. And I think as we continue the discussions, we'll be able to hone down on which region we start off with. But obviously, our expectation is that it will be a national system once we have the local area coverage figured out. It'll be expanded to a national system.
Merci. Deputy Larouche, vous avez 6.
Madame Larouche, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a study we need to complete, absolutely. It's an alert that we must implement. So I hope that we may arrive at a productive report submitted by this committee to move forward and to complete our work. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you to the public servants. Thank you to the minister. I would like to ask you a question. On page 340 of the budget that was tabled on Tuesday this week, the federal government has allocated $1.3 million over 3 years for the first phase of the red alert. It's good, Mr. Minister, but how are we going to make sure that deployment and organization of that alert takes place as adequately as possible?
Merci, Deputy.
Thank you, MP Larouche, for your question.
As you rightly point out, there is $1.3 million that's allocated. I believe it's over 2 years. 3 years, sorry. It's over 3 years. And to start the work. So we have, as I indicated earlier, we have started discussions with some of our provincial territorial colleagues. And the next step of this, we have been working, I would say, the last year or so in the consultation phase, and we have what we heard report, and we are ready to move to the next phase of this, which is co-development and continuous engagement. As we hone down on a region or a territory or two, or a province where we can start implementing this, we will be able to continue monitoring and seeing how it works. I think the first step of this is to look at a microcosm of the country and look at the several regions, whether it is Regina or Vancouver or part of Vancouver or northern British Columbia. I think that's the phase we're in, and I believe that this funding will allow us to do that. From a technical perspective, I don't know if Krista or Valerie, if you want to add to this.
Minister, the only thing, the Chair, the only thing I would add is that we do need the time to get this right, understanding that there's an urgency to do so. From a technical perspective, the reason why we want to do this on a regional basis first and then broader is to make sure that we can get the local considerations right. We've heard different things across the country.
Oui, j'entends ce que vous dites.
I understand what you're saying. You're saying that progress is being made and then you're at the co-development stage now. But what concerns me, and that is something we see very often, particularly with Indigenous affairs, the government puts money in the budget, makes a big announcement about the funding, but very often, and I have my colleague working in Indigenous affairs who reminds us of this all the time, and I'm sure my colleague will say the same thing. Very often, the money is in the budget. We can see it in the books, but it doesn't get down to the ground. Very often, the money remains in the state coffers, and it's not used to implement the actions that are necessary. And in this case, we're talking about women who are dying, Mr. Minister, women and girls that are murdered and assassinated. How do you make sure? Because we're talking about 3 years, but 3 years goes beyond the next elections, Mr. Minister. So we could say that this is an electoral promise. So how do you make sure that this is not simply an electoral promise and that the budgeted money is used concretely on the field to ensure implementation of this alert, which has been requested for by the Indigenous communities in memory of the murdered and missing women, to make sure that they did not die in vain?
Briefly answer this and ask Deputy Minister to continue. What's unique about this situation is that a lot of work has already been done. So we're not actually starting after the budget decision. We've done an extensive amount of work over the last several months, and I would say almost a year, in terms of the engagement, whether it's on a formal sense. There are 16 engagement sessions that took place in different regions. There's been distinctions-based conversations. I have personally, every region I visit, I usually meet with groups that are working on MMIWG 2S+, and I continue to do that engagement. So we have come far. There's still some technical issues to iron out, but also the core development piece, because until now, we were not sure what the next phase would be, and the budget decision really does allow it to move us forward.
Avant que vous répondiez, Madame la
Before you respond, Madam, you said you wanted to take into account local aspects. Will you also make sure that community concerns will be taken into account and that it will be led by the community organizations? Let me reassure you, the funding we have received goes to contributions to partners. There's nothing that is going to internal operations for the government. I also like to say that we did a lot of research on the local models that already exist and that have many lessons to offer us. So when the communities are involved as stakeholders, then we can be trusted.
You have 6 minutes as well.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to welcome you to our committee. As you can see, the solidarity around this table is pretty fierce, and I want to let you know that my abstention was no way in a reflection of you. That's important, and I want you to feel welcome here. But our solidarity is pretty fierce. Okay. And so I also wanted to thank you, Minister. I know that you've prioritized MMIWG. That doesn't mean that you're not on the hot seat today. And, Pam, for starting the discussions with me across the way, and quite frankly, all members of this committee who have been tremendous in your support, not just on this study, but other studies to really support justice for Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA plus around the country, it's very touching, and it shows that we can work across party lines to advance human rights in this country. So I want to thank the committee as well for that. The budget. I saw the budget, and I have to say, Minister, I was quite taken back, and I'm going to share quickly why, and I'd like a response. 1.3 million over 3 years, knowing that we are in the process of an election cycle, knowing this is timely. I was happy to see there was $20 million put in place to search the landfill. I feel relieved for the families, but again, that's an action that has to happen, like the red dress, after women's lives have been taken. 47 million to deal with the auto theft problem. And although I know that the auto theft problem is really tremendous in this country, the message is very clear that this country cares more about cars than it does Indigenous women, girls, 2S, LGBTQIA+. I'm wondering why there wasn't greater dollars put in, specifically in the areas of prevention, to deal with this, what has been acknowledged, in fact, by your government and your leader as an ongoing genocide.
Thank you, and I think I can call you Leah if that's okay. Look, I thank you for the question, and I know we've had some conversations about this leading up to the budget, and your concerns are noted, and I acknowledge them. I think the report of the of MMIWG calls for justice, the 231 are quite large, quite vast, and there is a preventative component and there is a supportive component. The preventative component goes to the core of the social determinants of health. So our investments on housing, our continued investment on housing, and I recognize that there are still gaps. I think it's critical. I think the issues around emergency shelters, $27 million for emergency shelters and transitional homes on reserve, I think is a critical point here. Over $1 billion for health care, including mental health and non-insured benefits like medical travel and so on the opioid crisis.
Yes, okay, I'll let you finish.
So if I can frame it, like this is a much broader issue. You can't just look at the two items and say this is it. This is a much broader level of investments. In fact, in total, it totals over $9 billion because it goes to the core of many of the relationships.
Sure, but just in all fairness, Minister, that's over a number of years. And I have to say, the AFN came out yesterday commenting on the lack of investment in housing. We know there's a direct relationship between women going missing and housing. I've put forward a private member's bill that's coming up for second reading to put in place a guaranteed livable basic income. We know that women's organizations that have come in front of committee have indicated that that is a guaranteed livable basic income is a most critical initiative to really tackle gender-based violence. Call to action, as you know, 4.5 of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls calls for exactly that. Your government has committed to implementing all the calls to action that it has control over. I'm wondering if you're going to live up to your promise and support my bill for a guaranteed livable basic income.
I think the best way I can commit to that, Leah, is to say I will work with you as always and work to ensure that we have the supports that are necessary and additional investments that are required in order to ensure that Indigenous women are not in vulnerable situations.
I appreciate that, but it calls specifically for a guaranteed livable basic income. It doesn't call for other investments. It calls for amending our current social safety net to save lives, to give women options so that they don't have to stay in violent or put themselves in precarious situations that are violent. So, my bill is coming up. I'm hoping that we at least get it to study. And I'm hoping we can all work together to keep our promise and hold up those calls for justice, which include 4.5 cut off. I don't look at Karen. I never looked at Karen because she would let me go on. I'll do the same with you. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. If you just want to wrap up with, you're good there. Okay. So in the nature of time, for those that don't peek up at me, we do have to make some changes. So to have everyone have a voice in the second round, Dominique, instead of 5 minutes, you and Ms. Hepner will both have 4, and then we'll have 1.5, 1.5. Okay. Dominique.
Can you repeat that, please?
Certainly. Yeah. For the second round. Instead of 5 minutes for both yourself and Dominique, instead of 5, you'll have 4 minutes. Okay.
Thank you, I misheard you.
No. Okay. Dominique, vous avez 4
Merci,
minutes.
merci, Shelby.
Thank you, Shelby, and welcome to the committee. Greetings to Karen. We are good friends of Karen on the side. Mr. Minister, I'm disappointed, very disappointed. Here you have women. We have Mrs. Siri, who is normally here with us to work on this study. We all agree. It's unanimous. We all agree that the red alert should be established. We are hearing 1-point-something million announced in the budget, but that's a low amount. I didn't quite understand the answer that was provided by Ms. Gideon a while ago, who said, well, that much money had not been invested, what came from partners. I didn't quite understand. You could clarify that. But I'm very disappointed. I do not understand that at the time we speak, you do not have an implementation plan. You have a committee that was set up, if I recall correctly, in January 2023, a roundtable. No meeting has been held by that committee. We don't know when the next meeting is coming up. I hope you can explain that. And the question I have as we speak right now is, are you running into difficulties? Are you meeting with resistance in the provinces and territories? With organizations? Are there organizations that are not agreeing with you? Because sincerely, with all that we know that exist, the Amber Alert, the Gray Alert, the experiences that we've heard in this committee. Throughout Canada, there are also experiences elsewhere in Canada. What are you waiting for to move forward and to implement this plan? It's not complicated. People have mobile phones. There's TV, there are programs, there's the CRTC. It takes political will. Do you have it, Mr. Minister? Do you have this political will? We are very disappointed.
Merci, Madame Vienne-Poirier.
Thank you for the question and for your comments.
The passion here. This is frustrating in the sense of how long it's taking to move forward. But I can assure you, since last year, since 2023, we've had 2 roundtables. In fact, we had a second roundtable this February. We brought together all the provinces. And we, in fact, had best practices that were shared by province of Alberta, British Columbia, and Territory of Yukon. We had a number of ministers who attended, including Deputy Minister from Quebec. And I believe that there is a general consensus on the need for a red dress alert system. That is also what we heard in the engagements we had, 16 of them across Canada in a formal way, and I would say a dozen or so informally by myself. So we have been working diligently on this. We will continue to do that. The challenge is, I don't believe there's a consensus in terms of some of the.
Quelles sont ces difficultés-là?
What are these difficulties? What are the difficulties you are running into? What are the obstacles that you're encountering? What is not working?
One concrete example, right? So one of the challenges we have is much of our public alerting systems are rooted with law enforcement, are rooted with law enforcement as the lead provider of those alerts, and as a result, the challenge that I'm facing and somewhat of a resistance I'm facing from many grassroots Indigenous women's organizations and women who've been working in this for many, many years is an endemic distrust of police, and it is historical, and in many ways it is linked to the legacy of colonialism. So as we try to find the appropriate balance, and as we try to find the bridge I think that is required to build that trust and to be able to maybe not just rely on police and to have alternate systems. It will take time, Madam V, and it's
Thank
not
you.
something that we can necessarily just
Thank you, Minister.
bypass.
Thank you. MP Hepner?
Thank you. I would also like to take a minute to explain why I could not support the election of the current chair. It is not personal at all, and I hope you don't take it this way, but I think I and some of my colleagues were really devastated at what happened to Karen Vecchio. It feels, and I don't know why, she was thrown off this committee. It feels like she was thrown under the bus. It feels like direction from the Conservative leader to keep committees from working collaboratively, because that
Point
is
of order.
exactly what
Point of order.
we have been doing at this committee.
Let's keep it to red dress. You're completely making assumptions about the Conservative Party. If you want to congratulate Karen, go ahead and do it, but don't go after our Conservative Party on this. Let's keep it to Karen and the respect she has and the respect we have for the new chair. Thank you.
That's not a point of order, and I hope that you can give me my time back on that, Chair. The point is, Karen Vecchio knew these issues. She's worked so hard for so many years, worked with her whole heart, and we have been able to accomplish great things at this committee. I really hope we can continue being collaborative and accomplishing things like this red dress study, because it's important. With that, Minister and officials, thank you for being here with us today. We're all a little out of sorts.
Sorry,
as
point
you
of
can
order
understand.
here, Chair. The language that Ms. Ferrari just used is completely inappropriate in committee. I don't know if you heard her, but I would appreciate it if she would retract what she just said.
MP Ferrari, would you like to speak?
Did anyone hear what I said? Is that on the record?
Well, I certainly heard it across the room. Michelle? Do you want me to repeat it for you?
MP Ferrari, would you like to retract what you said?
I would like to move forward with this red dress alert, and if I've offended Ms. Damoff, I retract that.
Thank you. MP Hepner?
Thank you. So what we've been hearing at this committee, we know that Pelmorex, Weather Network, has a system in place that could be adapted to use a red dress alert. The problem is that we want this red dress system to be Indigenous-led. And the key point of that is the threshold as to when the alert is issued and who makes that decision and who looks into whether or not an alert should be sent out if it's someone who truly is at risk or who maybe just doesn't want to be found. And so collaboratively in some of the different discussions, it's kind of evolved into a regional approach in that there might be regional bodies of Indigenous women who oversee the process. So rather than working with police services to decide the threshold and take next steps, it goes to a body of Indigenous leaders to make those decisions. Can you, I'm not sure if it's better for the officials or for the minister to answer that, but maybe you can weigh in on whether you can envision that sort of system working.
So one of the examples that we've seen is an emergency alert system that the Mi'kmaq nations in the Union of Nova Scotia, so in Cape Breton, have put in place. And so they use that alert system for missing persons. They use it for weather, for emergency situations, and they have a technology company that they've worked with in order to be able to design that. Now, that's at a level of an island with several communities, but you could take a model like that and you could replicate it at a provincial level. So I think that it's important to, we're not presuming that no one will want to work with law enforcement, but we wouldn't want a system at the national level that we would impose. That would make that assumption that everyone would have trust and collaboration with law enforcement. That's a partnership that needs to be built.
We know that law enforcement has to be involved at some points, and I think many of our witnesses have said that. But it's at the point of threshold. Who's deciding? Who's making these decisions? I think that is key. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, maybe I'll use another, Chair, maybe I'll use another example. In Washington State, an important element of the way that they work is an Indigenous liaison person who can work with the families of the person who's gone missing to play that important role of trust with the local law enforcement. And so there's a number of different ways to do that. And part of what we need to do now is land on that best way with partners in terms of what their needs are and what would result in trust in the system.
You only have about 30 seconds left, so if you can
Okay.
wrap it up.
So in your view, you're the experts, you're the officials. What would be the best way to roll out this system quickly and effectively and ensuring that there's Indigenous leadership? How do you see the best way of moving forward?
I could just say that I think what the minister has signaled is we do have some interested provinces that also see the benefit in their jurisdiction of doing that. And so our advice is to really proceed with initially a regional approach to work out what are the possibilities and then bring that back to a national table with partners to reflect on how that has gone and then to be able to move forward in a larger way. We have experience where we have done this, for example, with the Hope for Wellness line is an example of something that has existed for some time, and it has received some very positive feedback over time from First Nations and other Indigenous peoples, and it has been a model that was looked at in the context of a partnership advisory committee many years ago. We've built upon that now. It's actually the supports for MMIWG,
Thank you, Ms.
2S
Gideon.
Plus survivors and families, and it has expanded its scope and mandate.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you, Ms. Gideon. MP Larouche, you have 1.5 minutes.
C'est rapide, mais...
That's fast, but thank you very much, Madam Chair. Once again, welcome. Mr. Minister, we talked about funding, that disappointment to see the amount that was allocated in the budget that may not really be sufficient to implement the red alert system, which may end up being a campaign promise and so on. That was my last turn, but now I want to be focused. Officials, you talked about your experiences with alert systems in Washington, California, and so on. What lessons did you learn from all that? I know that some studies had been done by public safety on the situation of Indigenous women and girls. Did you have the opportunity to learn from experiences and recommendations made by other committees? And we want to make sure, Mr. Minister, that all of this is implemented as fast as possible in memory of all these murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls.
In the interest of time, I'll maybe just take that question and just acknowledge that we have looked at many jurisdictions that have systems in place, and we're continuing to look at them. We've also been engaging with different regional players and partners, and the experiences are different. The experiences even with law enforcement is different. So I think it's a continuous, for us, it's a continuous learning, because at the end of the day, what we don't want to do is develop a system doesn't have the trust and that's not being used. So ultimately, we want to have to be able to save lives, and that will require for us to do the work properly.
Thank you so
Pour
much.
bâtir la confiance, Monsieur le Ministre.
And to build trust.
And you have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Just going back in terms of timelines, understanding, especially being part of the consultations, some of the things that still need to be done. We still need timelines. Like, I just kind of feel like there's not timelines. Is there a plan to put in specific timelines, even working and negotiating with provinces?
Look, what I would be willing to do is work with you on a timeline, right? If there's, definitely, I've been consulting a number of people on this, including yourself, Ms. Gazan. So I would be willing to work with you on developing a timeline, along with some of the partners that we work with.
Okay, and I will report back to committee about whether I do get a timeline. Thank you so much, Minister. I do want to say that I do I don't very often compliment folks across the way, but it has been a real pleasure working with you and the whole committee, as well, everybody on this committee, and, you know, particularly Krista, trying to push this through. Again, I want to thank the whole committee for helping support getting this off the ground.
Awesome. Thank you so much, MP Gazan. That concludes our first panel. On behalf of the committee, I'd like to also thank the minister for his appearance. And as a reminder, the officials will be staying on for the second panel. So I'm going to suspend just for about 2 minutes while we do the transition. Thank you. Okay, the committee will resume our meeting in the study of the implementation of the red dress. We are back with our witnesses that were with us on the first panel. Welcome back, everyone. As we've already done the previous opening remarks, we can just jump into the first round of questions. MP Roberts, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And before I start, I just want to make it clear that people should not be making assumptions. And Karen was a great leader, but we welcome you. Shelby, I don't want you to take this from anyone here at our team, because we have worked very collaboratively together. And I think making assumptions is the wrong way to go. So I just want to set that clear for the record. Welcome, and thank you for being part of the team. And we also want to congratulate Karen. She did do a great job. So I'm going to start with, is it Mrs. Gideon? Did I say that right?
You did.
Oh, good. Okay. So through you, Chair, the minister's gone, but I would like your feedback on something. So Bill C5 passed, receiving royal assent on June 30th, 2021. The purpose of the act is to respond to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action, number 80. I was taught as a child that actions speak louder than word. And while this is a lovely sentiment, the action of the Prime Minister on the very first National Day spoke volumes. Despite receiving invitations to spend the day with survivors and their families, he opted for a surfing vacation in Tofino. In my opinion, his actions spoke volumes on importance he placed on reconciliation. How much damage did his actions
Point of order.
cause?
I'm just wondering what this has to do with the red dress alert.
I'm getting to that.
Okay, so if you could...
Yeah, so I guess what my question is, we've been studying this for, I believe, 3 years. And that was before my time. And we know how important it is to protect all women and children, and especially what has been going on with the Indigenous population and the missing and murdered Indigenous women. Leah brought this up because it is a concern, and we're all women here, and we all want to fight for the same thing. But doesn't that show disrespect to the Indigenous people?
So thank you for the question. What I'll say as a First Nation woman myself, a member of Gaskapégiag and a mother of 2 First Nation girls, is that I have been now in the federal system for 16 years, worked at the Assembly of First Nations before that. And I would say that there's been a significant amount of work in progress with respect to advancing reconciliation in recent years. There has been a significant level of increased investment in programs and services, but there has also been some very significant legislative and policy initiatives that are going to entrench certain aspects of changes. And in that, I'll reference the Child Family Services legislation, which is now been very much validated and supported by the Supreme Court of Canada in a recent decision, which now recognizes the jurisdiction of Indigenous peoples to really completely take over, design and manage child family services, which has been a significant risk factor for Indigenous women and girls and was very much highlighted with respect to the calls to justice. Another important piece of legislation is the adoption of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples.
So I'm sorry to cut you off because they only give me so much time. So we've had 5 meetings and many witnesses, and one of the things they all say is they don't feel like they're seen, that they're being seen. I want to tell to tell them for the record right now, we see you, we hear you, we listen. We need to do better, and we're not doing better. We, as a committee, need to ensure that this government makes this red dress alert a top priority. And I will tell you that we had Jennifer Jetson from Cape Breton. I'm not sure if you know her. She's from Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, who was able to get a system in place in a matter of days. And we heard her testimony, and it was unbelievable. And it wasn't about money, and it wasn't about anything. She got it done. Why is this government taking so long to take action on a very vital situation that women are going missing?
In my experience, when the federal government rushes into imposing a solution on Indigenous peoples, it does not work. The reason that that initiative in Cape Breton worked is because it was driven by the grassroots, by the local communities. They designed it, they managed it, they chose the technological provider, they set the parameters. This is what we are trying to emulate at a national level, but by taking the time to engage with Indigenous peoples that are not homogenous across the country. They are very diverse, and that is the richness of the work that we are doing to advance reconciliation.
So Mrs. Gideon,
Anna, you have 1 minute.
I think the issue here is, and I don't know if you'll agree with me or not, but there's just so much waste and so much red tape. When we have a system in place that could start immediately to help find these missing and murdered Indigenous women before they go murdered. Like, how do we do that if we're going to continue to do studies, if we're going to continue to do reports? It's enough is enough. We have to stop with the talk. We got to get it done. And I guess maybe coming from the private sector, if my boss came to me and said, here's an issue, I would make sure I'd act on it right away. This is serious. We're all women here. This is serious. We can't continue to lose our women, because without us, there wouldn't be a world.
We have multiple bosses. We don't have one boss, right? We have many different Indigenous representatives and service delivery organizations that have a lot to say about this issue and how they will see it succeed. So
Thank you very
do
much.
need to provide fora for them to bring forward those recommendations to us.
Thank you. MP Lampropoulos, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And first of all, congratulations to you on this new role. I really wish you the best in the role. And I also want to say a big thank you to Karen Vecchio, who was an incredible chair for over 6 years on this committee, who led a very collaborative committee where every single party worked together in order to advance the cause of women in so many different ways. And so I really hope that we can continue that great work. I feel like it doesn't say anything about you, Shelby. I have, no idea what's in store, but I do want to say that the removal of Karen as chair was I'm hoping it wasn't symbolic, but she was one of the members in the Conservative Party who cared more than anyone about women and girls. And so I really am sad to see her being taken away from the committee. With that being said, I have nothing against you. I actually like you, and I'm really hoping that we can work together collaboratively. On this important study, thank you to our witnesses for being here and for also doing what you can to advance this cause. It's obviously a very important cause. We've heard from many Indigenous women from across the country on this study so far. And what we've heard is that a red dress alert what it should basically look like is that it should be led by Indigenous women, that the decision-making table should include Indigenous women. And I've heard from you today that is the case, that our partners, Indigenous partners, are the ones that are kind of taking the lead here, and that we're consulting with as many as possible. And that's great to hear. One of the main concerns that I think we've spoken about at various meetings so far is the fact that the police needs to be involved in a red dress alert. And in this situation, we've heard mixed reviews because there are some Indigenous women who don't want police involvement because of the lack of trust that exists between Indigenous communities and the police in different parts of the country. We've also heard from different Indigenous women that police is required because they do have the tools necessary to be able to help in these situations. In the calls for justice, it is specifically mentioned that there should be policies that are national in scope, and so that there should be police departments across the country that are following the same policies and the same guidelines in order to make sure that cases are taken seriously when it comes to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that and say if there's any work being done on that front. I'm thinking public safety most likely would be who can answer this question. If any any work is being done to standardize protocols and to work with police chiefs across the country to make sure that there's something being done in this regard?
Thank you for the question. So one thing I would like, and it's going to be an awkward response because I'm responsible for emergency management. So when we're talking about policing, it is under another umbrella within public safety, which unfortunately they are not part of this table at this stage. But what we can do, I hear your point, I hear your concerns, and your point is very valid. We can take that to our colleague, and then we can follow up with a written response on that front, what public safety is doing on that part of work.
I can maybe just add, though, that, there has been an increased amount of work that public safety has done through new investments with respect to establishing trilateral agreements with communities with respect to policing, as well as increasing the number of self-administered police services among First Nations and Inuit. So there's been 93 new and ongoing projects in that regard, as well as investments in police infrastructure. And so I think this is improving relationships over time. More needs to be done, for sure. But it is a very important priority of a number of First Nations. So if we can potentially look at, some of these self-administered police agreements that exist in some jurisdictions and start in regions that have those types of relationships and actually bring that forward to chiefs of police across the country, I'm sure there would be openness to look at the type of protocols and relationship building that's happened. Krista also talked about Washington, and where they have like a sort of a navigator or a steward or someone who can advocate within the context of with police services directly to have a bit of that kind of interlocutor role and enable a safer and more transparent environment. I think it is about transparency as well with respect to what's happening in police services when these alerts are issued.
Can anyone tell me if there have been any conversations, though, with provinces and territories with regards to this? Of course, when they're self-governed, it's great. That's obviously a great step. But of course, most police departments or most polices of provincial jurisdiction, are there conversations with provinces in order to keep them up to date with what's going on, with what the requests are, and any conversations of that nature going on?
Chair, bottom line is yes. Those conversations are going on. Minister mentioned the National Indigenous Roundtable, Indigenous Provincial Federal Territorial Roundtable that happened at the beginning of February. The whole first day was dedicated to technical discussions around the red dress alert. And so not only provinces and territories, but also Indigenous partners were very active in those discussions. Minister described that there were several ministers present from the provinces and territories or deputies, and if not present in person, then participating virtually. So we regularly interact as officials with provinces and territories as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Who we are here? Madame Larouche, vous avez 6 minutes.
Ms. Larouche, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, officials, for being with us today. We are realizing to what extent there's unanimity around the table here. We are very happy to having you here for us to move this file forward. But we are at a cul-de-sac, and I'm trying to see how we can get ourselves out of this bind. We are hearing, as others have said before, it should be done for and by Indigenous people. And we also need the help of the police forces. And that's what the minister said. And that was a challenge. There's a lack of trust. And he's talking about the community. How can we resolve that issue? And what are you doing to try to rebuild trust with Indigenous communities? How can they trust the police forces while making sure that the red alert be representative of the needs of the communities while involving police forces? So how do we reestablish that trust between the police forces and the communities to resolve the issue? Because that's a challenge. Of course, that's a factor. The models that we looked into, there are several models that offer flexibility. It's communities that decide whether or not they want to participate in the alert system. It's not imposed upon them. At that point, if we move forward with such a model that offers such flexibility, we will be opting for a model that could build trust at the community level. It doesn't mean it's going to be most of the communities. There may be several communities that may be open to participating, so long as they know they are going to be involved in defining parameters and that there's transparency on how the system is managed, making sure that indigenous voices are part of the model. It's not the same thing having a model where everything is designed externally outside the communities. So we are not considering such a model. So if initially communities can have this flexibility to say, I am participating, I make the choice to participate, and I can withdraw that option, that choice, if I see that there's something concerning. There's something you mentioned before, the issue of the roundtable. There was a first roundtable that took place in January 2023. The government of Canada held the first roundtable on Indigenous members of the SLGBTQ community. Is there another date that has been scheduled for a second roundtable so that we can move forward in working hard and trying to reestablish that trust? Is there a date? We have one in February. That's what the minister was referring to. In February 2024, we had an entire day to look into that problem. We received excellent feedback during that roundtable. It was also the first time that people could directly listen to your colleagues who facilitated the engagement session to finding out what have you heard. So we're trying to find out whether we had captured all the issues and all the interests so that we could start working towards implementation. So we do have funding to continue the roundtables, but we have lots of working groups and lots of processes in addition to all that. So that's not the only avenue that we have where we are thinking about Indigenous people. There are lots of working groups, and we will be coming back with very specific questions on implementation so that we can build consensus. So there was the first and then the second. So another aspect, something else that we heard was that we have to be able to have a continuum of services. The alert should not be seen as the only solution, the magic solution that will resolve all the problems. Are you collaborating with other departments that could be interested to see how there could be better prevention, better education, and afterwards, how can the necessary resources be leveraged to make sure that the alert is well implemented, and after, accompanying services for victims? So things that are happening before and after. So are you thinking outside the red alert? Absolutely. We have the National Action Plan that concerns all the components in the system and all the programs and services. We were delighted to see that our colleagues at Indigenous Services Canada received mental health resources. For child and family services, they received funding to fight racism in the health system. So these are all investments that will continue supporting families and victims, and also help in prevention. Let me conclude. The money often remains in the coffers, and it's not all the money that is used. Announcements are made, but the money doesn't get down to the ground. Well, the money we received in the 2024 budget is not money that we can spend within the department for federal expenditure. That is money that has to be sent to partners through contribution agreements.
Suzanne? Thank you so much. I wanted to go back to the dead zones. You're from public safety. This is a safety issue. We've known that this issue has been happening for many years on Indigenous communities. There's been some federal initiatives around improving connectivity. We are now talking about a red dress, which will prevent some communities from even participating because their human rights to equal access to communications is still being violated. What is your department doing to address this very serious gap? And quickly, if possible, I have a couple of questions. Thank you.
I'll start, and certainly it is an issue that comes up in many conversations with regards to emergency management and public safety. We work very closely with our colleagues at Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada that do lead on issues related to coverage as well too, so it is an issue we are regularly working with them on.
Okay, so that answer for me is not satisfactory. We were talking about this in Manitoba in literally the 90s. It's 2024. And listening to testimony from folks that are from the Highway of Tears, they indicated very clearly if a woman goes missing, there's zones where they can't even call for help should they get the chance. Like once they're gone, it's over. Mm-hmm. This is costing lives. I know my colleague, Madame Ferrari, brought this up. I've asked for timelines for the red dress. What is the timeline for this? Like, is it going to take another 40 years? And in that time, we know the tragic stories about the Highway of Tears. What is the timeline to ensure that everybody across Canada, including those living in remote areas, have access to that human right?
Thank you for the question. I think this is a question that we need really to work with ISED on it. It's not under public safety responsibility. I'm afraid to say that. I hear your point. The timelines are so critical. Let us take this one back, and we'll follow up on
I'd
that.
like to request a written response. Yes. I have another question as well. We've been working on the red dress for about a year, consultations. It certainly involves public safety. It seems in the committee that I don't know whether your departments are not collaborating. You're a big part of making this happen quickly. I'm wondering where the discussions are between your departments to make sure we can get a red dress out in a timely way.
So we have been having conversation with our colleagues with CERNAC on this issue for a long time. Public safety responsibility is really to.
Can you please define long time?
But since since the work has been started, we have been. I don't have a date exactly, but what I would say, since this issue have been and the work has started, we have been working with our colleagues with CERNAC, and what we are providing from public safety perspective is the technical support. So we are not the lead on.
I share this with all respect because we've asked technical questions in the committee today. And it seems like we're not getting a lot of answers. And that technical piece is the difference between this being viable and not viable, in addition to consultations. Yeah. How much time do I have, Chair?
We have 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
2 minutes.
So just moving on to you, I spoke to the minister about, the time to get this right. And, I had in another committee around it was around amending EI to include kinship and adoptive care. You spoke about the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. We know the Bill C-15, one of the stipulations was that all legislation going forward had to be consistent with articles in UNDRIP. On several occasions, I've had to try and amend legislation in committee. On this occasion, I did the same thing. It passed in our HUMA committee, and the government overturned my amendments, which would have allowed it to be compatible. What is your department doing to ensure that it's following the rule of law, Bill C-15, which now informs part of our rule of law?
So in terms of the United Nations Declaration Act, so CERNAC has a lead or a co-lead role on a number of the action plan measures. We are also responsible for looking at pieces of legislation within the context of our department, right? That would be within the purview of CERNAC to identify areas where we would see the need for amendment. Any new legislative initiative would actually have to pass a review to ensure that it would be compatible with the United Nations Declaration Act. We have developed a tool within our department in order to be able to do that, and we have training
Just in
sessions
saying
as
that
well.
the action plan was supposed to be released within 2 years. We're now almost 4 years out. You're still developing a tool. When is that tool going to be complete?
We have the tool within the context of our department to ensure that our staff and across our department are equipped to be able to understand how to do a review of legislation or policy items that they are putting forward. So we have that developed.
Awesome, thank you. MP Ferrari, in the nature of time, originally 5 minutes, we need to shrink it down to 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you again to the witnesses here chatting about Red Dress Alert and implementing it. The reason we have the officials here today is there's consensus of this Red Dress Alert. We're trying to nail down the technical issues. It seems to be there's a little bit of frustration in terms of the lack of answers we're getting today. So Blue Sky Net has found that of the 285 Northern Ontario communities, only 74 had at least 50% of their households able to access 50 to 10 megabytes high-speed internet, equal to 26% of Northern Ontario communities. The same report found that of the 187 communities with a population under 1,000, only 41 have at least half of households able to access a standard rate of speed. The Minister of Rural Economic Development has spent $7.6 billion since 2015 to improve high-speed internet access in underserved communities. But even if you get access, which we see in the Auditor General's report that you don't have, Canada is still the highest cell phone bills than other countries. So even if you have service and you can't afford it, you might as well not have it. So there's a major gap here in these they're literally called dead zones. And they're literally dead zones for women who go missing. So I guess my question to public safety, you're saying here today that this isn't necessarily your file, but how would you fix this? How would you go back and say, okay, we need to work with another ministry to ensure that this happens and put a timeline? What is that? What happens in that process for people watching at home, taxpayers? Like, what happens so that you get, okay, I'm going to go talk to this ministry to ensure that this happens?
Madam Chair, if I may, I would like to take the question. And the reason that I would like to take the question is because part of CERNAC's role is to ensure that we produce annual progress updates with respect to the federal pathway, which includes all federal actions relating to the calls to justice in which the federal government is implicated. So as part of that exercise, we do have an update on the Call for Justice 16.5, which is relevant here. And as of December 2023, the Universal Broadband Fund, which is led by Innovation, Science and Economic Development, is on track to exceed its goal of providing access to high-speed internet to 98% of Canadian households by 2026 and 100% by 2030. I have also myself had deputy-level conversations with ISED to see how we could engage with other provincial territorial jurisdictions where they have identified areas of risk to see how we could expedite cell tower establishments, just like was done at the Highway of Tears, which was a collaboration with the provincial government and ISED in order to be able to fund 12 new cell phone towers along that highway.
We're out of time. I just want to say
Gideon.
that the AG report does not succinct what you're saying in terms of what has been delivered.
Thank you, Ms. Gideon and Ms. Ferrari. MP Damoff, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Shelby. I want to start saying something that is not directed at you, but I do find it unfortunate that the current Conservative leader has removed a smart, competent, progressive Conservative woman as the chair, and it makes me sad because Karen Vecchio has given her heart and soul to this committee. She was on the committee for 9 years, 7 as chair, and I served for the first 4 years on FEWO with Karen. We did important studies. The very first bill studied by the Status of Women Committee was Rana Ambrose's bill on sexual assault. And last year, I know for a fact that Kira's law would not have passed if it hadn't been for Karen's leadership. She has relationships with women's groups across Canada. She's ensured that trauma-informed questions are asked not only at this committee, but at others. And she's always worked with women's safety and well-being ahead of any partisan interests. I have no doubt that will continue under your leadership, Chair, but I do want to thank Karen from the bottom of my heart for her leadership and for all that she's done for the women of Canada. So thank you, Karen. My questions are for public safety. I'm the former parliamentary secretary at Public Safety, and I find it really disturbing that you come here and say you're not the lead on this. You are emergency management, and I do feel that public safety really needs to start engaging in this more and taking this seriously, because a lot of what we need to do when it comes to the alert system rests with you. There's only so much that Crown and Indigenous Relations can do, and I'm really grateful that Mark Miller and Gary Ann Desangri have taken on the lead on this, but it's time that public safety did as well. Pelmorex has shown me their system. They're located in Oakville. If we wanted to add Red Dress Alert tomorrow, to Michelle's point, it could be done. But they don't issue they issue the alerts. They don't determine who does. It's a bit of a secret committee, this SOCAN committee. Can you tell us who's on that committee? Are there any Indigenous people, or are there any First Nations police services on that committee?
Sorry, just, do you mean SORM? You said
SORM.
SOCAN.
Sorry.
Okay,
Sorry. Yes.
just confirming.
Sorry. Thank you, Michelle.
So yes, thank you for your question. What I would say, so SORM, the senior official representative for emergency management, what the members are representative from provincial and territorial jurisdictions. They are all responsible, most of them on emergency management. So what we are discussing through under SORM, the conversation that we have been leading, it's around the National Public Alerting System. This is what SORM is responsible.
My time is up. Pelmorex also has an app that doesn't rely on cell phone service. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but could you please send us a list of who is on SORM? And I don't know if the committee may even want to bring them as a witness.
Actually, we did provide, we are in a process to provide a one-pager on what is SORM does, what is the mandate and the membership, and it's going to be sent to the committee members by next Tuesday.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Damoff. Next, we have Madame Larouche. 1 minute, please.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To conclude, 1 minute it's not enough. Maybe to add to what I said before, you talked about trilateral agreements, so I'm just trying to understand what you're doing to make sure that the agreements are doing well, and what value can it add to the Red Alert? The work that we are doing now, well, we don't have any agreements on the ground, but we're working closely on the ground with our federal partners and provincial and territorial partners. Since the Red Alert system is under the responsibility of the Department of Indigenous Affairs, we are working closely with our colleagues in the department to see how we can move forward, how we can implement the project. It's not up to public safety to determine implementation of that alert. It's rather about working in collaboration with our partners.
Thank you. And lastly, we have MP Kazan. 1 minute.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to put forward a motion that the committee thank MP Vecchio for her years of service as chair of this committee. I'd like to table a motion. Pardon? And release the witnesses.
At this point, thank you very much for being here. There is a motion on the table. Is the committee in agreement to adopt it? Well, technically, it hasn't been in advance of 48 hours, so is it the will of committee?
Yeah, I think so.
At this point, we're going to suspend for a few minutes and figure out what the next step is. So as you know, according to routine motions, generally need 48 hours, interpreted as 2 nights for any substantive motion to be moved in committee. It's not a contentious motion. The motion has been put on notice, and can we ask for unanimous consent from the committee to move the motion?
We've all spoken on it, and I'm not sure where we're going with this motion. Leah, could you maybe, I'm not sure what everybody has thanked Karen. We all miss her. We all thanked her. What is the purpose of the motion, if she could just explain it?
Do we have unanimous consent? I'm sorry, I'm just asking procedurally.
Start a list if we have speakers to it. Leah?
Yeah. So I wanted to move this motion because, like other members, I was very troubled by the decision by the Conservative Party to remove Karen Vecchio. And I share this not because of the Conservative Party, although I have much to share about the Conservative Party, as you know. I share this because there is a culture in this House of Commons that demoralizes and excludes the voices of particularly strong women. Karen Vecchio, I've had the privilege to get to know. Before I go on, I want to be really clear to the new chair. I think you're lovely. I welcome the new chair to the committee. I want you to feel safe. And I don't want what I have to say make you feel unsafe. That's very important to me. I mean that. I really mean that. But I'm putting this motion forward because I think women need to stand up for women in this place. Karen took the time to get to know me as a friend, but particularly really listened to some of the issues that are very marginalized in this House. and I would say particularly issues surrounding Indigenous women. Prior to being elected in 2019, Indigenous women were pretty much off the radar after the national inquiry. And if it hadn't been for me pushing along with the NDP, along with powerful women across party lines, as we have seen with the Red Dress study, we would still be dying in the streets without the level of passion that I have seen around this committee table. Inclusion and exclusion is intentional. I am really troubled that a voice of a woman who is highly respected by women across the country has been taken off the committee. A woman who was able to work across party lines so that this place, this committee, could be one of the only safe places for women in the House. This doesn't feel safe to me anymore. This doesn't feel safe to me that if parties see strong women in committees that threaten a political agenda, that we can be silenced. That's how the right to choose gets threatened. That's how the rights of trans women get threatened. This is the only place we have to lift up our voices to protect each other. And I've gotten to know people around this table, and I consider you colleagues and friends. I am so touched by the Red Dress study, and I'm so touched with the work that Karen did, working with the chair to make sure that we heard what we needed to hear to advance this quickly. We are literally dying in this country. That's how critical this committee is. And I don't feel as alone in the House of Commons because I've worked with every single woman in this room across party lines who have my back. So I'm going to have Karen's back this time. I'm going to stand up for Karen Vecchio. I'm going to stand up for Karen Vecchio and give the middle finger to partisan politics and political posturing, including by the Conservative Party right now, who gave the middle finger, as far as I'm concerned, to a functioning committee who's fighting for our rights. Shelby, you are lovely. Again, I don't think you're going to do a bad job. I think you're going to be fantastic. I think you're fair. You are a diplomat. You're lovely. I want to be very clear that what I'm saying is no reflection of your competence or you not being welcome, which is why I'm saying I hope what I'm saying doesn't make you feel unsafe, because you know what, Shelby, I will have your back. If you do things that step out of the line, like fighting for reproductive rights or trans women, I'm going to have your back. I'm going to have your back because I know that our voices in this House are really minimized. And I'm going to fight for this. You know, there's hills you got to die on. And for me, this is a hill. This is probably one of the only places I feel safe in this place. What I've called a misogynic, racist, colonial shithole. Especially as a minority woman, as 10 Indigenous people in this place, in a seat that I was never supposed to be in. And I feel like my safety has been violated by another colonial violent act, misogynistic, by the Conservative Party against Karen Vecchio. I was wondering, where's Karen the other day? I don't know what happened. I don't know what led to this. But like, she's a colleague. She's also a sister. Like, we're sisters in this circle. And I have gone almost every meeting. I leave here and I feel hopeful. Like, so hopeful that maybe some of the reasons that I came here, maybe some of the people that want me to fight for issues, maybe it can happen because I see what we do around this table. And they have violated that trust. A place that is known to be unsafe for women, a place where women in politics get harassed every day in the House of Commons, a place where we have said things in confidence and upheld each other's confidence. I don't know what that's going to be like now. Now, I have a wonderful relationship with every Conservative member on this committee, including you, Shelby. All the Liberal members, I have good relationships. Adrienne LaRoche, I have a wonderful relationship. You know why? Because when I come into this committee room, it's my place to stand up for us as women, not just for women's rights, but putting studies out that people feel proud of. Like, I was so proud of this committee under the leadership of Karen Vecchio that we put forward a study on the connection between resource extraction and increased violence of Indigenous women and girls. Something that maybe some of the men might have found really controversial, but we made it really clear that this wasn't about resource extraction. This was about whether you agreed with resource extraction or not, that they need to stop raping women in Indigenous communities and companies need to be held accountable. We stood up for women. We stood up for women instead of big oil companies and big resource extraction money that are making money off the backs of Indigenous women. We stood up for that. And maybe that's controversial for some of the parties in this House. I would say the Conservative Party certainly. And I'm talking about the Conservative Party specifically because I'm really disgusted by what has transpired to my friend, my honorable colleague, Karen Vecchio. That's garbage. That's garbage that any time a woman is going to stand with her sisters in other violence on studies like oil extraction, that it's seen as rebellious and radical, like somehow the raping of women is rebellious and radical. Somehow we have to turn a blind eye because we don't want to, tick off big industry. This is concerning to me. And I don't know where this committee is going to go. Are we going to let toxic masculinity pollute this committee? I'm not talking to you, Shelby. I'm talking as, in general. Okay, I want to be really clear, Shelby, because part of me feels like it's not about you, Shelby. It's about the broader issues and systemic issues within the House of Commons. Like, anytime women join hands and say no to violence, are we going to be punished? We know some of the studies we've done have been pretty edgy in this committee. And, we have, even in the most, studies that people had different opinions, we came out the other way. So what does that say by throwing Karen Vecchio out? Who's going to be next? Are we going to have to listen mostly by men in leadership in the House of Commons? Otherwise, the girls are in big trouble in this misogynistic place. So, I'm sorry I'm taking up so much time, but this is a bigger issue to me than just Karen. This is about, there used to be, and I hope that we have it again, a cross-party women's committee where women supported women in this place. I'm waiting for the day that a trans woman is in this place and we're not passing motions that threaten their safety, not just outside, but in the House of Commons by the Conservatives. A group of folks who Karen Vecchio, by the way, supported. And I worry that some of her progressive decisions impacted her safety to stay in the committee when she stood up for human rights. These are the most critical issues of our time. We see 12-year-olds in the States having to give birth because they can't access a safe trauma-informed abortion care. And these topics are scary in the House of Commons, even in this committee, because everybody's worried they're going to get in trouble. Not me, not my party. We're clearly pro-choice. So I've never done this before, but I'm going to stand up for Karen. Because if any of you get in trouble in this committee, I want to let you all know that I will have your back. I will fight hard. I am a huge defender of women's rights, and I will fight hard for all of you because you deserve that solidarity. I'm going to give that solidarity to Karen. You know, she didn't deserve that. She didn't deserve what happened to her. She didn't deserve what happened to her because of some of her progressive views, including having to deal with, as the chair.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Sorry to interrupt you, Leila, but I think, what? What did I say?
You said Leila.
Okay, so it's that time of the day. Sorry, Leah, but I think we should just go to the vote.
No, there's hands up. There's hands up. We can start next meeting, but there's hands up.
A running list right now, and it was a unanimous consent, so we can't go to a vote. We can choose to resume next meeting. There are a couple options on the table.
I know. Okay. No, other people are on the speaking list. We can adjourn and then continue on. Or suspend, and then continue on next. I'm fine with that. Okay. Did you want to speak first before we adjourn?
It's on the list.
In that event, we will need a motion to suspend, and there'll need to be a vote on that motion.
Sorry, Chair, I'm not here next meeting, but I would like to speak, and I don't know where I am on the list.
You're about 6 down.
6 down, okay. Yeah.
We need a motion, should we wish to suspend? Motion to... We have a motion to suspend from Michelle Ferrari. We have a motion from Michelle Ferrari to suspend.
Est-ce qu'on peut demander le vote, Madame la Présidente?
Can we ask for the vote, Madam Chair?
Okay, so we're just going to vote on the motion to... Okay, sorry. Just on the motion to suspend. Okay. Everyone? Okay. All right. Okay.
Suspend the meeting.
Yeah, okay. Madame Lambropoulos?
Just pour être sûr, if we start again at the next meeting at the beginning, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so yes.
Mr. Moff?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Sidhu? Okay. Ms. Hepner?
Yes.
Ms. Vandenbelt?
Yes.
Ms. Ferrari?
Yes.
Ms. Roberts?
Yes.
Madame Bien?
Suspend?
Yes.
Madame Larouche?
No.
Okay. Ms. Gazan?
Yes.
Okay. 9 yeas. 9 yeas, 1 nay. I declare the motion carried. So, suspend.
So we're suspended. So
You can suspend. Yeah.
suspended. So now